In ancient China, there was a punishment that didn't involve chopping off your head. But just hearing the name was enough to make a man's legs go weak. It wasn't exile, it wasn't whipping. It turned you into a man who was no longer a man. This was gongxing. Gongxing first appeared during the Ye dynasty and became standard during the Han. It was one of the 5 punishments. At first, it was used for major crimes: treason, rebellion, insulting the royal bloodline. But more than punishment, it was humiliation. It stripped a man of his ability to reproduce, and with it, his identity as a father, a husband, a man. After the Qin and Han dynasties, gongxing took on a new role. It wasn't just for punishing criminals anymore, it became a filter for selecting palace servants. The emperor didn't want any foreign bloodlines in the harem, so only castrated men were allowed near the royal women, and that's how a new profession came into being: the eunuch. If you think gongxing was just a name in an old law book, you're mistaken. It was very real, in the way it was done, brutal, even by ancient standards. The man was shaved, stripped, and tied to a low wooden bench, his arms and legs stretched out, no way to move. The cutter was usually a retired eunuch, experienced, steady. He held a crescent-shaped knife sharpened to perfection. Next to him, cloth, bamboo tubes, boiling oil and ashes. Tools not for healing, but for survival. No anesthesia. They stayed conscious through the entire removal of their genitals. The moment the knife cut in came searing pain, tearing flesh, and a blankness that hit the back of the brain. Some passed out. Some bit through their own tongues. After the cut, a thin bamboo tube was inserted to let them urinate. If it slipped out, the wound would seal. Urine would back up, infection would start, and death would follow, slow and silent. Then came the bleeding. Ashes were poured in, boiling oil, sometimes even a red-hot iron pressed straight onto the wound. Pain was just the beginning. The real test was staying alive. Qing Dynasty records show a death rate of 30 to 50%. If you survived, it was called a clean cut. If not, you were called ruined, unable to urinate, left to rot from infection. But the worst part wasn't the body, it was what came after. You were no longer male, you had no family, no legacy, no name to pass on. After gongxing, those who survived put on black robes and a hat. They were no longer sons, husbands, or fathers. They were eunuchs, the quiet shadows of the Forbidden City, serving tea, opening doors, cleaning floors. From morning to night, they kept the palace running like clockwork. They ate worse than servants, slept more crowded than the maids. Many never stepped outside the palace, not once in their lives. For them, gongxing didn't lead to favour or riches. It led to decades of silence and solitude. But not every eunuch lived in the shadows. In the Ming and Qing dynasties, some eunuchs rose to the centre of power. They stood beside the emperor, controlled money, controlled appointments. They became the gate between the harem and the court. Wei Zhongxian, called the 9,000-year lord. Even emperors feared him. Li Lianying, beloved by Empress Dowager Cixi, practically ruled the Qing from behind the curtain. The logic was simple. They can't have children, so they won't have ambition. But no children doesn't mean no desire. They had no sons, but they had schemes. No families, but they built factions. No right to inherit, but every trick to hold power. Thousands of men endured gongxing, but only a few were remembered, and the most famous one wasn't even a eunuch. He was a historian. In 99 BCE, during the Han Dynasty, Sima Qian defended a disgraced general and angered the emperor. The punishment? Gongxing. He was the court historian, and he had a book left unwritten. Faced with humiliation and torture, he didn't choose an honourable death. He chose to live disgraced. He wrote, "All men must die. Some deaths are as heavy as a mountain, others as light as a feather." He chose to finish his book. That book became known as Shiji, Records of the Grand Historian. It covered 3,000 years of Chinese history, and he wrote it with a body destroyed, but a will unbroken. 2,000 years later, another person's life was influenced by castration. His name was Sun Yaoting. He was neither a criminal, he was just a boy. At the age of 8, His father took him to have the castration procedure. He said, "I thought we were going to the market." Instead, he was locked in a dark room. He didn't know why. All he remembered was pain, cold, fear. He entered the Forbidden City, served Puyi, watched an empire collapse, saw the palace become a museum. He never married, had no children. He lived until 1996, the last eunuch of China. Late in life, someone asked him, "What's your biggest regret?" He lowered his head and said, "I've never truly been a man."